I got to tell you, I love this series, and I hope it's been beneficial for you guys. I hope it's something that you guys have been able to walk away from feeling a little bit more confident in knowing some steps that you can take to grow deeper in your faith. Because here's the reality. You and I don't want to be stuck just on the surface level of faith. We used the analogy in the very first week of the series that, if you want to go scuba diving in the ocean, it's awesome because you can see all the things below, which are really cool. But what's even cooler than that is if you go scuba diving and you actually put on the oxygen tank and you go deep and you can actually see everything around you. You're completely submerged. And sometimes that's what it's like with our faith. We've got to go deeper if we want to get more out of the experience. And sometimes when I was a kid, at least, whenever my mom would take us swimming, she would tell us, until we had swimming lessons, she told us stay out of the deep end of the pool. Right? She said stay in the shallow water until we finished your swimming lessons. And I remember going and getting swimming lessons for like 2 or 3 summers in a row as a kid. And at first I could just dive right in and swim in the deep end, but after practice, I was able to swim in the deep end, and actually it became my favorite end of the pool to be at. But the same is true with our faith. We have to learn, we have to practice, work our way up to going deeper and deeper in our faith. And so hopefully this series is giving you guys some good steps to be able to go deeper in your faith. So as we kind of begin this lesson, I want you guys to be thinking about a question as we continue to talk about this. And the question is this: what would be different about your life if you had a deeper faith? What would be different about your life if you had a deeper faith? I mean, if you're like me, and we've talked about this in the last couple of weeks, but you know somebody who has a deep faith, and they inspire you. You look at them and you're like, man, I wish I had a faith like that person, right? And so when we see people like that, they inspire us to grow deeper in our faith. They make us want to have a better relationship with God and take that whole thing to a deeper level than what we're currently at. And what would be different about your life if you had a faith like that person that you look up to and that you admire? What would be different about your faith? Man, I think that's a question that if we don't ask ourselves that, if we don't evaluate where we're at and ask what would be different if our faith was deeper, then we'll never go deeper. We got to ask that question. So be thinking about that this morning. Maybe you know someone like that. Maybe you don't. Maybe you are new to the faith or new to church or new to this whole idea of following Jesus. And so the idea that even deeper, it's something that just sounds silly, right? Maybe that doesn't sound appealing to you, but here's the thing. No matter who you are, no matter what your background is, no matter what experiences you've had in this life so far, we all tend to have some trust issues when it comes to God. We all have a hard time being able to know what He's trying to speak into our lives because we can't see Him. And things happen, and we don't know what to do with that. And so sometimes we just have trust issues with God. No matter who you are, we all go through that at some level. And we wonder, how can we trust in God? And that question, as we've talked about, sometimes is the make or break the journeys. And God. Man. Sometimes it's not the big things, but it's the little things, the little decisions that you make every day. Putting your trust in God through the little decisions that you make, one step at a time, I think will help in a lot of ways as we try to grow deep. Let's get into some of the scripture. I think we're going to be in Matthew. We've been a couple times in this series. But Jesus, as we've talked about, has been going through, and He's been healing people of all kinds of diseases and ailments, and people who are deaf, people who are blind, people who are less deserving of being healed, people who everybody else didn't think needed a second chance or deserved a second chance at life. And Jesus has been showing dignity and honor, healing even those people with leprosy. And so Jesus has earned this reputation as a miracle worker. And He's gained this kind of following. And so as this is happening, check out what happens next. When Jesus entered Capernaum, a Roman commander came to him. He asked Jesus for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home and can't move. He is suffering terribly." And this is really interesting for a few reasons. So before we go further, let me just tell you, when a Roman commander came by to a Jew, you know what you did? You turned and ran. You hid. Because the Roman Empire didn't really like the religious people, because what they said about Jehovah being their king conflicted with them, because they thought Caesar should be your only king. And so Rome didn't particularly like the Jews, or soon to be the Christians. And in fact, they often would go out of their way to persecute them and make life a little bit more difficult for them. So when a Roman commander came, you ran. You didn't want to have anything to do with that. You didn't want to be around when they were around. But you would expect Jesus to do the same thing, but he doesn't. In fact, let's keep reading. Next verse, Jesus says, "Shall I come and heal him?" The commander replied, "Lord, I am not good enough to have you come into my house, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed." Now, here's something really important. This is a culture that is motivated by honor and shame. Now, that's something a little bit different than what you and I experience in our cultural context in the United States of America. But when they operate with honor and shame being high values, here's what this means. His social status, the Roman commander's social status, how he fell in the food chain, how much he was respected, how much he got the things that he wanted, all that honor and his name, all that honor is dependent on sometimes on the people they choose not to interact with. And so by him coming to talk to this Jesus, who already wasn't really liked by the Romans, was putting him at a lot of risk. He was risking a lot by coming and talking to Jesus, putting his faith and putting his trust in Jesus rather than in the wise and in the physicians of Rome. And so he comes to Jesus, and Jesus listens to him, but he goes out of his way to ask, what can I do? Can I come to your house and heal him? And this guy, he knows, I don't follow all the laws and all the rules that you guys follow as Jews. I don't worship your God. So I know that I'm on the outs with you already. And so I know I'm not even worthy of having you in my house. He's showing Jesus great respect here, saying, I'm not worthy of that. He goes, but I believe that you don't have to come. You could just say the word, and my servant will be healed. Then Jesus says something about this guy that I would kill to hear him say about me. I wouldn't really, because that would be bad. But I would love to hear Jesus say these words about me. And sometimes I think he does, but I just don't know how to hear it. But here's the words that Jesus says. And it's pretty crazy. Here's what he says. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed. He said to those following him, "What I'm about to tell you is true. In Israel, I have not found anyone whose faith is so strong." Now that's a big statement. He doesn't say that about Peter. He doesn't say that about James. He doesn't say that about John. He doesn't say that about any of his other disciples. He doesn't say that about Mary or Martha or any of the other women who have been following him. He says that about a Roman commander, someone who the Jews viewed as their enemy. And Jesus said, "I haven't found anyone in all of Israel who has faith as strong as this." And Jesus was amazed by him. Man, that just blows my mind. I'd love for Jesus to be amazed at me. I'd love to say that about me. And Jesus is saying that right in front of him. Jesus was amazed at this guy because he put his trust in Jesus. Despite his social status, despite he was a political enemy, despite the fact that the Jews hated him, Jesus said that there is nobody with greater faith than he. Man, that's just crazy. That's mind-blowing. And here's the thing. When we trust in God through daily habits, through our hurts, through our struggles, our relationships, our time, Him grow. God can use our daily habits to grow our faith in Him. God can use our daily habits. And this is really easy to take the wrong way, because you can read that and you can say, God uses my works to earn my salvation. And that's not what this is saying. It's not saying that you can do good enough and then you'll grow deeper in your faith. What that is saying is that in the little things, what you choose to do with your time, what you choose to do with your relationships, with your money, with all that kind of stuff, those little things, those habits grow your faith. In fact, I want you guys to watch. This is a Michael Phelps commercial. I just want you to watch this real quick, and then we'll talk. That it's pretty obvious. If we can take that idea that what you do when you practice on your own, when you take those first steps yourself, then those are the things that make you into the person you are wanting to become. And if we can apply those same principles to our faith life, I once heard, I think it's probably some youth minister as I was growing up that said this, but he was talking about our character, and a lot of times we think like what we do is what makes our character, and that's kind of true, but not fully true. He says, because it's really easy for us to just put on a face and put on our Sunday best and try to be the person that fits the mold for a while, but then that's hard to be consistent in every other area of your life. So this is what someone said to me when I was younger, but he said, your character is defined by the things that you do when you think nobody else is looking. What kind of person are you when you think nobody else is looking? Those are the things that define your character. It's what you do on your own integrity. It's what you do when you don't have a name to make for it, when you don't have anything to prove to anybody else, but when you are just trying to become the best you that you can be, whether that's on the baseball team or swimming or in your choir and your vocals and your parts, that what you have to do is you have to put in the practice. You have to do that time on your own to build those skills and hone them. And the same is true with your faith. Time on your own, working on your faith life, just like you have to anything else. It's a muscle that needs to be built up. And it's who you are when you think nobody else is looking. You know, day lives is where our faith begins. It's that trust. It's trusting Him that in the little things that He's actually working through those and making the difference in our lives. Because what we can convince ourselves, well, that one little thing, that won't make much of a difference in the long run. And that's how often Satan grabs hold of our heels and gets us addicted to some kind of sin, is because we believe one little thing won't make that big of a deal. But it's in those little decisions, those little things, that we start to put our trust in God, that actually He knows what He's talking about. And we trust in Him, and He's able to use those things to deepen our faith. God can use our daily habits to grow our faith. So if there's a couple things that I would have for you to do, it's one, work on, your one-on-one time with God. Things like reading our Bible or praying or listening to a worship song or just spending time in silence. Because here's the reality, is there's so many distractions with all the different screens that you have access to, with the music and the headphones, with just all the people who are trying to speak into your lives. You got like 7 different classes that you're going through with 7 different influences trying to teach you. You got church, you got small group leaders, you got parents, you got all these voices speaking to you. None of those things are bad. But if we can't silence them long enough to hear from the voice of God, then we're probably not going to hear him much at all. Sometimes it's through the silence that God speaks. So work on your one-on-one time with God where you eliminate all distractions. It's much easier to differentiate God's voice from all the others when all the others are silenced. So work on your one-on-one time with God. And time with others is the second thing. You got to have a strong community, because here's the thing. We live in a day and age where you can find anything you want to hear anywhere. On YouTube, podcasts, Audible, and books you read, and movies you watch. You can find a message or a life statement or answer a question anywhere. Okay? In fact, there's resources, there's YouTube videos that if you want to believe a certain way or act a certain way as a Christian, you can probably find some YouTuber online that will tell you as a Christian what you can and cannot do, if that's what you want to hear. So here's where time with a Christian community is super important, because you need people in your life that can tell you the tough things that you don't necessarily want to hear. Truth. And that can hold you accountable. Have a Christ-centered community in our lives. So work on time with others. People that can build up your faith, that can motivate you. Those people that you want to be like, that inspire you in faith, put yourself around more of those people. Be real with them. Don't just put on a face, because we can all put on faces, and that doesn't really get us very far. So be real with people. Work on your time with God and your time with others. So over the past few weeks, we've talked about putting into action our knowledge about God and how he wants us to live. Taking a look at the people who influence us and making sure we have someone who can help us grow our faith. We've talked about using our gifts, time, and our talents to help and serve those in need around us. We've talked about being honest with God, about the tough situations that we're going through, that he'll use them to grow our faith. We've talked about today how God can use our habits, those little things that we do each and every day to build our trust in God.